would like to bring this meeting now to order.
Okay, we also have a joint meeting with the City Council of the Planning Board. This is primarily concerning amendments to Leominster zoning ordinance. And there are a number of parts that to go through that we'll cover this evening. How do we want to handle it? Do you want to read them? You want me to read the different sections, starting with on the yellow page, the synopsis?
Sure, that would be great. Maybe start with part one.
I'll go right down the line, okay. The first part is to clarify the planning board has the authority to modify the driveway, parking lot, and landscaping standards as follows. Article 2, Section 2.3, Commercial Districts. In granting site plan approval for any project in a commercial district that includes at least 10,000 square feet of retail space, the planning board may waive any of the requirements of Article 8 or Article 11 regarding the width of or number of driveways, the height of light standards, the extent of paving or the landscaping of parking areas, and substitute, therefore, the features shown on the approved site plan. The second article, the industrial districts. Section 24, 2.5, add the following. In granting site plan approval as provided in Section 2.25 thereof, the planning board may waive any requirements of Article 8 or Article 11 regarding the width or number of driveways, the height of light standards, the extent of paving or landscaping of parking areas, and substitute, therefore, the features shown on the site plan. So these two are to do with driveways. We can open, do we have any, I'll take the section and open it for any comments or questions that somebody may have at this time.
I would, John, if you don't mind. What's the logic behind this?
This is a problem that we ran into in the CVS, and then in changing the width of the driveways and marrying that, so this gives us the authority to make the changes when we get into a situation like that in the intersection. It wasn't really covered properly in the original plan, so it's primarily cleaning up and allow us a little more latitude in the work that we do.
Excuse me, John, that doesn't clarify it for me, excuse me. Far from clarifying for me. I continually say, give me examples. You're talking about the CVS. What are you saying that in a normal circumstance there'd be requirements that need to be fulfilled by the company, but obviously something happened that they couldn't meet those requirements, so they needed adjustments. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And it's primarily
examples in that one. What happened in that case?
It was primarily to do the site. I think Mary can address it.
Mary, you probably know. Okay.
Right, with that it had to do with the width of the driveway, and there was a question as to whether or not the planning board had the authority under site plan approval, because we talk about what the width of the driveway should be, what the size of the parking spaces should be, where the landscaping should go. Does the planning board have any flexibility at all when we're dealing with that site plan? If we wanted to, let's say, move the landscaping area, do one large landscaping area because it made sense for that site, under what we have right now, we really don't have the authority to do that. So what we wanted to do is add a little flexibility. So with the CVS project, I think we did a pretty good job with it, but if we'd had maybe a little bit more flexibility, we probably could have even done a better job with that one.
Meaning that the width is less than it should be of the driveway?
Not on this one. What this would give us in the future is the ability that if, let's say, someone wanted to do a driveway that was a lesser width than what's required under the ordinance, What this would do is give the planning board the authority to do that. The only way I think you could do that now would be to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance and to the planning board. So what we wanted to do is to clarify in the future, if someone wants to ever deviate from the site, what we did under the last zoning project, so we added a lot more standards to our site plan review section, where we used to be very loose with what we defined under site plan review. We added more standards, more guidelines. Well, as we've dealt with that in our first project or two under that, what we realized is that we didn't leave ourselves any room so that if someone needed to maybe do a driveway that was less, like they have 2 driveways, and they didn't want to have both of them be as wide, or they wanted to do some more compact parking spaces, we really don't have any flexibility to work with them. And that's what this would give us, is flexibility to be able, through the site plan approval process, to be able to work with companies.
Is this the first, obviously you're changing this, is this the reason, because CVS? Has it happened before?
Yeah, that came up during the CVS project.
But you've been here for a while, did it happen before with you?
It did not happen before. This, CVS was the first project really in the door under the new site plan review and commercial
Okay, all right,
development
okay,
standards.
all right. So this is, well, this is, and you've been here, what, 5 years, 7?
5 years.
So this is the first time it's come up with you?
What happened is that when we adopted the new zoning
Right.
ordinance, we just added more requirements under site plan review. The CVS project happened to be the first one through the door after we adopted the
I
new
understand.
standards.
That
And
makes
and
sense.
what we've had to do is maybe learn what we did right
Okay.
and maybe correct.
That makes a lot of sense, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? You all set now?
Yeah, thank you, I
No
appreciate that.
problem.
Question.
Do I have it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mary, one of a concern by doing this, first 2 questions. You said that before, in order to change this, you would then have to go before the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. So there were 2 steps. Now, this means we'll go to the planning board, will not have to go to the ZBA?
Correct, this would just define that the planning board has the authority to work with any developer on the site plan review standards. So it doesn't change the dimensional standards, it doesn't give the planning board the authority to waive the dimensional standards. What it does do is these items that are under the site plan review criteria, it gives the board that's actually working with that the ability to modify that.
One of the things that concerns me about this, and it's not a major thing, but immediately came to my mind was, if someone is putting up an area and needs parking spaces, is I would see it right now, if the regulations say that you are going to be required to have 100 parking spaces, suddenly this fellow, a woman, whoever, the developer comes forward and says, gee, I've only got space for about 90. Well, does that now mean that he could start making, quote, compact parking spaces, increase the number of spaces that he now has? And, you know, when I look at that, so many people are driving these utes nowadays, these, you know, the big Mercury 4x4s and all these different things. Car sizes, to me, have probably gone up in the last couple of years. And if you suddenly allow them to have more space, more parking spaces by allowing more compact spaces, doesn't that overcome the original intent?
Let me clarify, I don't think I maybe was quite as clear as I should have been when I was answering Councilor Sabatelli's earlier question. What this does is that it gives us the ability to work with someone on the width and number of driveways, the height of lights, the extent of paving and landscaping of the parking area, and to substitute other features. And all of these are controlled under the site plan review criteria. The number of overall spaces and the number of overall compact spaces is within the parking, and we would expect them to follow that. What this does is give us flexibility to allow them. Right now, we pretty strictly say you have to have planting areas where you have to have them. What this would do would allow us to if we saw that a certain parking lot design didn't have a really good flow to it because of where they needed to put all their landscaping areas and that type of thing, what we could do is move those landscaping areas around, possibly change the driveway width and that. This just gives us some flexibility only with those items under site plan approval.
Okay, so at this point, you're talking mainly allowing changes for landscape purposes and not necessarily for other,
Right, not the overall number, but rather for landscaping and that type of thing.
okay, well, that makes me feel better,
Yeah,
thanks.
the number is determined by the square foot area. And then out of that, there's a percentage that have to be compact spaces, a percentage that have to be handicapped, and a percentage that have to be full size. So that's determined. What this does is gives us the flexibility of how we move it around on location and where to put trees and things like that. Okay? Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, I'll proceed on to the second section. It's basically clarify the ownership criteria for mixed-use projects as follows. Article 2, Section 2-24, Industrial Districts. Section 24.25, Mixed-Use Development Project. A mixed-use development project shall be planned, developed, owned, or managed as a cohesive unit. A site on which a mixed-use development project is undertaken may be made up of parcels in separate ownership, but shall be considered a single lot for the purpose of all use. Dimensional, open space, landscaping, and design requirements of this ordinance, including without limitation, yards, setbacks, setback buffers, the number and design of parking spaces and areas, number of loading bays, location of design of driveways or interior driveways, and location and quality of open space, provided that such site is subject to a master plan as provided in this section, 24.2.5. Any setback, yard, landscaping or buffer requirements otherwise applicable at the perimeter of a lot shall, in the mixed-use development project, apply only at the perimeter of the site of the mixed-use development project. Primarily what this has been was that we said that it had to be a single owner initially, and we found that we can have multiple owners to come up with a total mixed-use plan. So, but there's one master plan for the total package. So, as I understand it, this opens up the ability to have multiple owners under one master plan. Okay, but it's it's one site.
That makes us more flexible, John, especially with the little land that we have left in terms of industrial things and
Exactly,
that would
exactly.
allow.
Exactly. Where before, where it was originally written, you have to remember the mixed use, what we're doing with mixed use has not been done anyplace else. We're on the cutting edge. So we're starting learning. So initially, we said it had to be one owner, but now we're finding out, well, not necessarily somebody that does commercial development is into industrial development. So we say the larger portion of the commercial development now will come up with a master plan, but include an owner from that does industrial development. But there'd be one master plan for the area.
Is this the 117 rule?
This is 117.
This is the 117 rule.
I assume that, Castle, thank you. Jungle Road.
Yeah. This allows us to put that whole package together. Mary, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did a very good job of explaining it.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Yes.
Once again, a question, and who is going to be responsible for following up on this? Mary, you and John, and I have spoken, I know, about a certain project in Woodview. It was a housing development, and there were all kinds of problems. Things went on and on and on and on. And we had one person in control of this. And the enforcement, the follow-up, trying to make sure that the neighbors' wishes were respected, trying to negotiate back and forth, to me was one of the most frustrating things I've been through in my 11 years in the council. So now, if we don't have one person who is essentially sole owner of a project, and we now have multiple people involved, how are we ever gonna enforce this? If we can't enforce it with one person, how are we gonna enforce a project if there are multiple owners?
This is a little bit different than housing. This is the mixed use. We're saying is there is one master plan and one person who is responsible for that. But under that umbrella, you can have multiple owners. Unlike housing or some of the problems we had with A&R plots, we don't have any bonding. You know, with site plan, we have bonding, and we can bond the property to make sure that things get done. So this is industrial, commercial, rather than residential, and it gets out of that.
There's two sides of the road. I'm going towards Lancaster. Left side of the road is not included in there, right?
Where the former Walmart
Yeah,
sign
yes.
was, that is zoned commercial. That's not.
That's what I'm saying. That's already zoned, so
Right.
that has nothing to do with that area. The right-hand side, jungle road area, right? What you're saying is you're taking the whole 200 acres, and no matter who's in there, as long as they conform, then it all becomes part of the pie. It becomes one pie, right? And the pieces of it may be owned by different pieces, but essentially the entire pie is what you're planning on.
Correct. What we're asking for and what we do require is that before anyone can even pull a building permit to go forward with one of these developments, that master plan has to be on file at the Registry of Deeds, and Ed Cataldo has to have a certified copy from the Registry of Deeds that it's been filed. So we have built in that provision, and what we have run into is that as folks have come in and reviewed our new ordinance and they've looked at this mixed-use provision, one of the issues that they did raise is that oftentimes with big projects, you're going to have multiple owners, but they're generally always managed by one company, and they function as a cohesive unit. But for a number of reasons, a company wants to own their own site, and many times that's for their own financing purposes. So as we got further into this, we just realized that to try and put together these larger projects, there are going to be different owners, and we needed to accommodate that.
Is that the 70-30 rule too? Is that involved in that? Nothing's changed on that, right?
No, we're not.
that's it.
proposing any
More
changes.
of shared driveways, shared parking, to make sure everything flows together,
Well,
rather than trying to limit it to addressing each lot separately.
Will this enhance the ability of people to get that place going?
I believe it will. It's one
The
of,
final roadblock will be
right.
taken down so somebody can do something now?
That's what I'm being told by folks that have reviewed this and are trying to do projects with it, that the way it's written now, it's limited because you can't put everything together often under one ownership. It's going to be, they need multiple owners.
It's been a long time. That land's been there for what,
Yeah.
50 years? 25, 50 years?
Been there a long time.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the thing so it can be worked and can be used, and they have the
All right,
incentives.
okay. Thanks, Mary. Thank you.
Are there any questions, any other questions, board or the council? How about from the audience?
Buffer zone on each lot.
Number 3, use the term mixed-use development project consistently throughout the ordinance and replace the word lot with the word site. Consistently throughout the ordinance. The following sections will read as follows. Site plan approval from the planning board shall be required for any mixed-use development project for a site containing 20 acres or more, and in which not more than 1/3 of the total land area of the development was devoted to retail stores. Site plan approval and special permit from the planning board shall be required for any mixed-use development project proposed for a site containing 20 acres or more, in which more than 1/3 of the total land area in the development shall be devoted to retail stores. 24.2.5.1.1 Site plan approval application for mixed-use development projects shall include a master plan and development schedule under this section, 24.2.5.1. The master plan shall show the overall development of the site, including property lines, footprint, and dimensions of all proposed buildings, parking areas for all uses, and a legend and with percentage of all uses proposed for the mixed-use development project. The development schedule shall include the proposed rate of development for the mixed-use project. The development schedule, the master plan, shall be subject to the planning board review and approval. The approved master plan and development schedule shall be recorded by the applicant in the registry of deeds, and no building permit may be used for any mixed-use development project approved under this subsection until proof of such recording has been submitted to the Director of Inspections. 24.2.5.2, a special permit from the City Council and site plan approval from the Planning Board for a mixed-use development project on a site that is less than 20 acres. For mixed-use development projects on sites that are less than 20 acres, the City Council should have the authority to limit the land area percentage for any one single use. Thank you. Section 22-6 in the table of uses. Mixed-use development projects on sites over 20 acres, on sites less than 20 acres. So primarily, this is a cleanup. We change it from lot to site because, again, as the ownership changed, an owner would be designated a lot or an area where the site encompasses the entire area, okay, or the plan. So really, this is just a housekeeping issue. A number of lawyers have come back to us and they had a problem with that definition of lot and the definition of site. So that's why this is.
Also, throughout the ordinance, we had used mixed-use development, we'd used project, and it just wasn't clear. So we decided just to change them all to one standard phrase, which is mixed-use development project.
Okay. Do I have some questions on that? Bob, soon as you get a question.
I don't want to keep asking questions.
No,
but
no, I want to ask.
Obviously, Constantine and myself were involved in this zoning for 2 years.
Yeah.
I think she probably was on it for 5. The first part, you talk about a comprehensive plan, which I understand, and the reason for it. Then you come to this one, you go back to 20 acres, isn't that?
No, 20 acres, the difference is, the 20 acres, all this says, that's the table. Okay, in the table it says mixed-use projects, over 20 acres is the planning board, under, 20 acres and less is that doesn't change. So nothing changes as far as the responsibility,
But at 117, there's a lot of owners with less than 20 acres.
but it's the total package, and that comes under the planning board. And that's why we're looking at the entire site and not an individual owner's lot.
It goes back to.
Okay, so it goes back to the total planning of the entire project.
The whole site is being planned, but within that site, there are people with less than.
That is correct, and there are lots of certain acreage. Okay, so lot specifies the actual deeded area, or ownership of an area versus the site is all encompassing.
All right.
Mary? Okay.
Right here. Over 20 acres planning board.
The other question, Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
This is essentially a word change,
that's all.
and that's all, because I can remember, well, I was on legal affairs in the 2 or 3 years that we were on, discussing this, I know, with a particular developer at one point, and I remember we were talking about the percentages of retail space, and none of that percentage has been changed.
None of that.
From what I can remember here, I must admit, I don't have the
Yeah,
latest zoning book in front of me,
still
but,
70-30.
okay.
Okay, but all this is a word change to clarify it, to make it a little, legalese.
Well, I like the idea of using the term site versus lot. I think that makes it a lot easier for everybody involved to do things with it. easier for us to watch it too. All right, thank you.
Do I have any other questions out there?
Just a point of clarification, I apologize for being late. Basically, what we're doing is just cleaning up some of the language. The only thing we're looking at is anything in parentheses. Everything else has already been accepted, approved, voted on, and it's in place. So the only thing we're really doing is clarifying some and re-voting on some of the question of the actual terminology,
Exactly.
to make it clearer and more precise so that there's no misunderstandings at the planning board or the council level.
That is correct. Okay. So yeah, there's nothing of substantial in this part that we're changing. That's, you know, that basically dot the i's and cross the t's, make it look, you know, let's get it legally correct. Okay? If there are no more questions, I'll move on. Okay. Clarify that banks and restaurants are allowed in the mixed-use development project by amending the definition found in Article 1, Section 22-4, definition as follows. Mixed-use development projects, MUPD, a business center, industrial, and technology park or shopping center being a group of 2 or more of the following use businesses and professional offices and buildings, professional and consumer service establishments, retail stores, banks, restaurants, including drive-in, allowed in industrial manufacturing establishments, industrial research and development facilities, and which may include such other commercial uses as typically found in such mixed-use centers as parks. A mixed-use development project shall be located on a site that may consist of 1 or more lots, which lots may be in separate ownership, and shall be planned, developed, owned, or managed as defined by the master plan and development schedules and provision provided in section 22-24-2.2.5. So, again, this is a
Those are the only
clarification.
changes right there.
When
That word.
we were re-looking at this, it just wasn't clear that restaurants or banks were allowed. We had made the assumption that they would be allowed under personal and consumer service establishments, but that really doesn't cover banks and restaurants. So we just wanted to add that in there so it'd be clear.
Mary, which lots may be in separate ownership, was that originally in parentheses like that, or is that something that's been added? Maybe that's a question for Attorney Keller.
No, it is, that was added.
Oh, you add.
Yeah, we added that. And that goes back to, actually sort of works hand in hand with the item, I believe it's item number 2, clarify the ownership criteria that we'd gone over under number 2. So we talk about, you know, how you can put together one of these sites. And we talked about the fact that when you were putting together a larger project like this, people need to have different ownership. And so yes, that's a clause that was added to within that.
Basically for clarification?
For clarification, really to go along with number 2 in clarifying that lot means one thing, site means another. And we were inconsistent with our first go-round with the language in that we used really the word parcel, lot, and site to mean the same thing. And when folks started trying to put this together and work a project, they pointed that out to us, and it seemed so obvious. But when I guess you're working with a whole book, it didn't seem so obvious then.
Do we have any other questions, comments? Yes.
I just have one comment, and I've talked about this with Mary also, but I think that in your next round of housekeeping for the ordinance, if you adopt this language in the definition, the next time around, you're going to have to revise section 24.25 so that the language mirrors the language in the definition. Because right now, right now they're almost identical, but when you change the definition, it's going to be slightly off in the actual text of the ordinance. So, you know, just as a housekeeping thing, you can't really do it now because this hasn't been advertised for a change. So next time, you know, next time you're doing something, make them correspond.
Working a live document. But it's nice, it's on disk now, it's a lot easier to change in the computer. Okay. Any other questions?
She's the attorney, so take the word for it.
Okay. 5, remove the phrase for municipal purpose for section 22-16, subsection 16.7, page 22. Could you please expound on this one?
Excuse me, John?
We're remove the phrase
Yes, for municipal purposes. This came up when, what this basically has to do with is when the city council grants their permits on temporary trailers. When we revised the language, for some reason, the phrase "for municipal purposes" was added to the wording, and I'm not quite sure how that came to be in the new ordinance. And it needs to be removed, because was never what was intended, and I'm not quite sure how, when we were putting in new wording and taking it out, if something it was a glitch, but it needs to be removed. And that was pointed out to us by Brian Riley when we were working on a special permit. The planning board was actually making a recommendation to the city council, and he raised that question and just made the suggestion that when we do our housekeeping that we take that out.
Do I have any questions on that? Yes.
My memory serves me correct. This was put in because of the trailer that we had that was used as the mayor's office, the temporary office on 3rd Street. We ran into a problem in that we were allowed to grant the use of that trailer for 6 months and then another 6 months, and the trailer was there for years. So it was for the city's relief. Now, I'm beginning to wonder if at some point we might need, we might have someone who decides, again in the future, that they'd like to have a trailer used, they'd like to donate the use of the trailer, say maybe for the fire department for extra space or for something like that. And if we take this out, that might be defeating the original reason that it was put in there, Mary.
Yeah, actually, when you go to our 1987 book, that phrase was not in there. And I'm not quite sure, I honestly don't know. It's one of those where somehow it ended up in the final version and it was never highlighted as a change, so I'm not sure if John Mullen, when they were redoing the first ordinance, if that was put in there and never highlighted and we just did not pick up on it. But basically the provision reads now that trailers and mobile homes being used for municipal purposes situated outside of mobile home parks and trailer parks shall be permitted in all portions of the city for periods from not more than 1 year, but not to exceed 18 months, provided that a permit in writing has been granted by the city council. And with the phrase "for municipal purposes" limits your ability to only issue special permits for trailers for municipal purposes. So you couldn't grant a special permit for a temporary trailer for anyone unless it's for municipal purposes.
Okay.
And so,
Yeah, like an instance, say somebody's house burned down, and you allow a permit for 6 months or the building construction. With this in there, you can't do that. It only can be for municipal.
Over 18 months, you can't do it, essentially.
Yeah.
so for some reason, I actually, John Mullen, I tried to track him down on this and he couldn't, maybe when they were looking at it, they thought at one point that the city was being too liberal by allowing for trailers outside of, by allowing temporary trailers. I'm not sure, and the only reason you should have them is for municipal purposes. But we certainly, in the past, have always allowed for someone to come to the city council for a special permit for a temporary trailer. But Mr. Riley of Copeland and Page had pointed that out, that it was inconsistent from 87 to this ordinance, and it wasn't highlighted as a change, and so I believe it was just done in error.
It just seems an innate amount of unfairness. We as a city put a trailer to be used for municipal purposes down on French Hill, down on the east side. And it was there for a number of years. The trailer's been removed, and now here we are looking at changing the ordinance. We had a business on North Main Street, a car business, that wanted special permission to put a trailer up because they desperately needed expansion space, but did not own the building at that point. And we ended up essentially was given leave to withdraw. And as I said, there's an innate, to me, it seems like an innate unfairness that, it seemed to be a fine law as long as the city was doing it, but for everybody else, it's a no-no.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Judith, but my read of this would be that trailers and mobile homes being used outside the mobile home park
They're not permitted.
Yeah.
Unless they're for municipal purposes.
unless they're for municipal purposes under this, and I don't think that was ever been the intent. I think that it's always been the intent that someone should be allowed to have a temporary trailer if they go before the city council and the city council deems that that's appropriate. I think under this, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but even if it's a municipal use, they would still have to come before the city council for a special permit. So under this, I think anyone who wants to do a trailer or mobile home outside would have to come before you, even if it is a city.
I just want to make sure that the playing field is level for everyone, that's all, essentially. All right, thank you.
Okay. Those are the primary housekeeping ones that we can take care of. And as far as the planning board is concerned, that we could act on at our meeting later on tonight. And that portion of the hearing. The second part here, these are ones that cannot be fully addressed at the hearing. Copeland and Page will need to further refine these items prior to final adoption by the City Council. So primarily, the hearing is open, we're taking information, and then people will be able to address those issues, and then we can move forward. Okay? So not necessarily, for these section, we'll leave the hearing open and address that at another time as we get more information and corrections from Copeland and Page.
Or actually, should we close the hearing and then schedule a new hearing, Judith?
Yeah, you can close this hearing on the portion of the ordinance that you will be voting on later to amend. And then this can be really a discussion workshop. Eventually, when we have actual language ready to be presented, then you would hold a new public hearing on that language. I mean, you can certainly hear from the public. There's,
Right. But the first part, when we just went through, just for clarification of my book, is these that we'll be able to vote on, and if I close the hearing on that, on this section, do we reopen the hearing for the second part?
Well,
Or is this,
you can just close it for the whole thing if you wish. In other words, you can continue to hear on the other subject matters, but you won't be able to vote on them, okay, on part two.
will we have to advertise it again? Because this
You
is.
will.
Yes, we will, so we
We will.
might as well close the whole thing this evening and then re-advertise for the
Okay.
other items.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
might I ask, since we are, I assume, on TV tonight,
We are?
can we, I'm pretty sure I saw TV people here, but in case we are, can we just briefly highlight these 5 things so that if people are watching, they know what it is?
I'll let you handle that.
Okay, for the most part, these 5 items, again, add the term retail store to the table of uses and make it consistent with the definition in our table of use charts. Right now, we define what a retail store is in our definition section, but we don't have it in the table of use. And what we do have is we list every store. We list department store, sporting goods store, electronics store, and so we need to make that just more consistent. So that will be something that we'll be working on with Judy Cutler. The next item was from a letter that we received specifically from the Department of Environmental Management in August of 2002, and they wanted specific modifications to our floodplain district. So we do have a letter from them outlining the changes that they would like.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, what kind of changes are they looking for? Why would they be looking to, we don't have new maps, do we?
We do not have new
quite
maps,
old.
and you're correct. I think some of those are at least
Incredibly old.
20 years old. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what triggered this at the state level, but we did receive a letter that, from the Department of Environmental Management saying that they have been reviewing all of the zoning ordinances throughout the state to ensure that they're consistent with FEMA and such, and they just made some recommendations on things they would like changed regarding our floodplain ordinance to make it consistent with FEMA and to ensure that we can continue with our national flood insurance program. They felt that some items need to be corrected. As best I could tell, again, a lot of the items were housekeeping items. Again, they talk about, they wanted the phrase, the exact boundaries of the district may be defined by the 100-year base flood elevation shown on the FIRM and further defined by the flood insurance study booklet data. That's an example of the type of thing, a phrase they wanted added. I didn't see anything that just, really caught me and said, geez, this is something that's a significant change. But that, again, is one of the reasons for passing it on to Kopelman and Page to say, review this, make sure that there's nothing in here that's a real significant change. But my understanding is that the Department of Environmental Management, the person who's in charge of the flood hazard management program, is going through all the ordinances throughout the state.
Is there any way we could get a copy of that letter?
Oh, absolutely. It's within your
it's in the
petition.
packet?
Yeah, if you go
Okay.
through this packet, there's a copy of the letter
It's in the white section.
and the model ordinance. If, did you get a copy of that, Council?
Yes, I must
Okay.
have it here.
Yep.
This section right here.
It's the,
Okay.
In the white pages.
All right. Thank you.
So, yeah, you don't, at this point, don't know of any changes in boundaries, more or less, or anything?
no,
It's
more,
one
it's
word
more or less
verbiage again.
references, wording changes, clarifications, and
Okay.
such.
Thanks, Frank.
I mean, I think, for the most part, every flood map is incorrect. I mean, they're all so old, there can't be any accuracy to any of them that any of us are using, but that's all we have to go by.
20 pages.
So I was just curious as to what they could actually be.
Well, just like one thing as a cleanup, section 3, 22-37.1, change state building code reference to section 3107-0. So, they've changed their code, and it's now a different section that refers to, so we have to change ours to refer to the right section in their code. So that's what some of the changes are. Housekeeping.
Would you like me to move on to the
Yes,
next item?
I
Okay,
think-
the next item,
yeah.
and this one is actually, I have a separate handout on this, and it's define and regulate in-law or accessory apartments. And when we were right when we were finishing up the last major zoning project, the ZBA and the building inspector had asked that as we maybe look to make revisions and such, that we consider adding some type of regulation on what they call in-law apartments or accessory apartments. And so that's what we are trying to look at this evening, to see how folks feel about adding provisions to regulate accessory and in-law apartments. Right now, we don't address in-law or accessory apartments in our zoning ordinance. We don't address it at all. So Ed Cataldo, our inspector of buildings, does allow for in-law apartments, provided that they're not separated by a firewall, that there is a point of ingress egress between the units and such. And sometimes I know that maybe not having anything in zoning has created some issues in certain neighborhoods. So what we are looking to do is to see if folks want to add these types of provisions. I brought forward and included in your packet a model ordinance, and it was one that I had worked on when I was in the town of Holden as the planning director there. The highlights of that particular ordinance, how we decided to do that in Holden at the time, was to do it by special permit in all residential districts, and the ZBA was the permit granting authority. It would be a separate unit, and everyone who, in other words, in order to occupy that unit, you would have to be related by blood or marriage. The next provision was that you're only allowed one accessory apartment per one family dwelling unit. The minimum lot size was 10,000 square feet. The appearance had to be that of a single family, with the entrance either to the rear or the side of the structure. Allow for enough parking, and in other words, there would have to be at least 3 off-street parking spaces to accommodate the single family with an accessory apartment. The accessory apartment would have to be subordinate to the main structure and be no larger than 700 square feet and no more than 2 bedrooms. The special permit be granted to an owner, and it would automatically terminate upon fee transfer. And the successor entitled would have to obtain a new special permit to continue with the in-law apartment. And finally, in that particular ordinance, there at the time, there were folks that had accessory apartments that wanted to have some sort of provision to ensure that their units were grandfathered. So there was a provision to allow that existing accessory apartments could be continued. So those are highlights from that ordinance. I think what I'm looking for this evening, and maybe the planning board, I know we had a very good discussion on this one night at our planning board meeting, are some of the ideas that we've set out here, are they what folks have in mind for what they'd like to see in an in-law apartment? Do you think this is too restrictive? Would you like to look at other communities? And any input you have on this would be great.
So this is primarily an input to the draft that you see in front of us, and we can add or subtract to that and be submitted to complement page, and then they'll create an ordinance which we'll advertise and have another hearing on at a later date. So we're taking information now to what the general feeling is of people for an accessory apartment. Yes, Councilman Lanciani.
Thank you, Mr. Souza. Mary, as I've looked at draft ordinance over, I've looked at it on a couple of occasions, and I'm very satisfied with what it is at the present stage, and upon any further recommendations or requests that councilors may have to be added or taken away from it, I think that it's a good example to be used for what we are looking to do, and I can understand why we would want to have something in place so that we don't run into problems, because what sometimes happens while an in-law apartment is granted and utilized for an in-law, once they move out and move on, it's used for, it now becomes a 2-family home, and it's used to rent out, so that in this other respect, that it's used for an in-law apartment, that's what it stays for,
And once the in-law is gone, or transferred or sold, it has to be a new permit applied for. And I think that gives us some protection as to what the intent was at the time of issuing an in-law apartment permit and going before the different boards requesting that. And I know that I have gone before the planning board and the zoning board to speak in favor of that at those times. But knowing that we didn't have anything to have a termination if it happened and does happen occasionally. So I think it's a good start, and from there we'll go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Frida?
There's no question this is something we need to look at. We all know that affordable housing is a real problem in every community in the state. And there are many elderly who just can't afford to live. Anybody can check the line. I just saw Mr. Lascotti out there, but anybody can check the housing authority and know that there are years and years and years out a waiting list to get into the housing authority apartments for people who can't afford, to live that way. We definitely need to address it. I know many communities have them, and I don't think we should overly regulate them. I think we need to be cautious with them. And I think the appearance of the property needs to be maintained as a single-family residence and a single-family dwelling. But, how far do you go? If there's an issue, do you still have the amount of rooms on a lot that's adequate? It wouldn't be the first time I've ever done an appraisal where all of a sudden the kitchen disappears and next week the kitchen's back. So, there are many issues that have to be looked at as enforcement. But I think for the most part, I don't think too many communities have really had major problems with them. If they have, I think it's been a lot in the line of neighbor having a dispute with the neighbor anyway. So, I think we need to have some regulation, but I think we can't over-regulate it, and I think we need to lean on the side of adopting something to help families join together. In many cases, two properties could be sold, which opens up a property for a young family to purchase, while that elderly family joins with their children. So I think we need to look at, there are people that we're talking about moving into these properties, and there's a real need in the community for it. So I think we need to look at it closer. If we could get some sense from other communities, how many have a regulation adopted with this, if we could do some kind of a survey through, however we can do it through the planning departments and see what we have. Is this something that the planning board is recommending? Or you don't know yet?
We will be. We're taking input now.
You're definitely going to be doing it?
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to take the input. I actually talked to Mr. Cataldo last evening, and he also had some additional ordinances, I think he said from Lowell and Lawrence, that had in-law apartment ordinances. So we're going to get those and look at this one, and we're trying to get a sense of what the interest of the people, the city council, and the general public might be looking for.
I think we need to get, a lot of them. Lowell and Lawrence is opposite ends of the spectrum to Leominster. Holden is probably a little bit the other way. We need to get something in a light community to us and see how the subdivisions are played out in some of those communities.
Right, and that's the plan, is to collect that. Those happen to be the ones he had. And I think we can gather from either end of, where the problems lie. I think we all know of some instances where there were in-law apartments. Those people have since moved on or passed away, and in residential area, we have rented apartments. So it exists. So we have to find a way to control that.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I agree that you do indeed need to do something about this. I think of all the years, how many meetings I've been to the planning board, and there's always, it seems, almost every time you meet, it seems like if somebody's putting in for in-law apartments and ZBA dealing with them. So I realize that we definitely need to do something about this. One of the things I noticed is, and it might be probably tightened up because we talk about a marriage or a blood relationship, but I also noticed one accessory apartment for one family dwelling unit. And we had an ordinance for cars in the city as far as unregistered, uninsured cars. And I know of one particular place that had multiple cars parked in the yard. And when I went to check and spoke with the building inspector, who I can't remember who it was at the time, essentially said that the way the ordinance is crafted, it essentially allowed one car per dwelling unit. And it was a multi-family house. So they could have about 6 or 8 cars in this building. I know that there are also lots in the city that have 2 houses on a single lot. And so therefore I wonder if, rather than have per dwelling unit, maybe per lot or something like that, might tighten it up a little bit more, so you don't have somebody coming down and quote, putting in an in-law apartment and then coming back 2 or 3 years later and saying, well, we decided we'd rather use the other building, can we put one in there? And then, as the chairman said, times changed, and now you suddenly on one lot have 4 units going.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, good input. Do I have any other questions, comments? Do I have anything from the audience? Out there, anybody have any comments? Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add on this, Mary?
I don't have anything else to add on that, except for that I'll be happy to work with Ed Cataldo, maybe come up with more formal language, send that to Copeland and Page to put it in ordinance format. But at least I have a sense of that people want to move forward with this.
Okay, good. Yes, Council.
I guess I would just be concerned, maybe because I'm in houses all the time and see, what happens, but I would be concerned that we become too much of a police community. We need to understand the issues of elderly living with their children and the provisions that are made for that. I think for the most part, from what I see, for the most part, it's done with the best of intentions. I don't think it's abused an awful lot. So I'd hate to see us, I want to see us create an ordinance to protect everybody concerned, the neighborhoods, the public, but I don't want us to get to a point where it's prohibitive for a family to be able to do something if they have a neighborhood that's receptive to that. So, I guess I just ask that we be on the side of compassion as we do this. Maybe that's not the right word for zoning, but, that we just keep that in mind, exactly what the intent of the in-law apartment is, and not be too much of a police attitude.
I think the intent of this is to clarify some of the misconceptions. So that once we get it down in writing, then it's the same no matter. We're trying not to make it restrictive. We're allowing people to do it. But, we had one that came to us, wasn't too long ago, where they were coming, well, they wanted to call it in-law apartment or what, but
Bigger than the house.
the house attached to the house. The original house was probably a little ranch of about 1,000 square feet. The apartment was about 2,500 square feet. Okay, so that got denied, needless to say, but it would eliminate something like that and get it clarified. Not that we want to stop anybody, but we just want to make it so that everybody's on the same playing field. And we do put some restrictions on, specifically size and egress and exit and things like that, and safety issues also.
I suppose if we can have compassionate conservatism, we can have compassionate zoning too then.
There you go. Okay, any other questions? I'll move on, Mary.
The next item has to do with our water supply protection district. And you will recall, and I'm almost chuckling when I say this, because I remember when we were at the end of the zoning project and we were debating whether the lot size in the water supply protection district should be 2 acres or 3 acres. It had been proposed to be 3 acres. That's how the final version was written, and then it was decided that it should be 2 acres. And we changed that throughout the ordinance, and that was great. Judy Cutler that night said, make sure that asked if it would have, anything else would be affected by that change, and we didn't think it would. Well, shortly after that, Chris Knuth, our Board of Health Director, came in to point out to me that the way that the ordinance is written, we say that you can have no more than 150 gallons per day per acre. And what that translates into is a 2-bedroom house, since we have the 2 acres. So he has made the suggestion that that we change it to 220 gallons per day per acre, and that will allow for a 4-bedroom house. I don't think it was the intent of the planning board or the city council when we made that change to limit someone to only have a 2-bedroom house in the water supply protection district. It was just within the regulations, 150 gallons per day per acre limits someone to a 2-bedroom house.
Okay, I think we should specify on our write-up that the 220 gallons per day per acre allows a 4-bedroom house on 2 acres. Because that's not clear.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does that mean only 2 acres, only a 4-bedroom house? I know what you're saying.
No, 220 for 2 acres. So
Mr. Chairman, I
bedroom one.
might want to check, I
That means
I'd s-
440
I don't have the figures in front of me again,
for 4 bedrooms.
but I'm sure I remember Mr. Brooks from the DPW saying that the average house in Leominster
3 acres.
was using 330 or 350 gallons of water. It was over 300, it was either 330 or 350. So, if indeed you've come up with that amount, you might want to check with the DPW or the water people, just to make sure that your numbers
Great
match.
idea. No, I talked to Mr. Knuth, but that's a great idea.
I have a input from the audience.
Title 5 says 110 gallons per day per bedroom,
Okay,
so that's why he's getting the 220 per acre.
all right,
It's per bedroom.
okay.
4-bedroom, 110 per bedroom.
Okay.
4-bedroom, you need
It's not per house, but it's per bedroom. Okay. Do I have any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, very good. Mary?
The final item this evening is one that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that is in the 1987 zoning ordinance, in the Residence C lot size and density requirement, it read, a lot size shall be at least 8,000 square feet plus an additional 2,500 square feet for each dwelling unit, and the density shall not exceed 8 units per acre. When we changed it to a lot size shall be at least 8,000 square feet and an additional 5,000 square feet for each dwelling unit, density not to exceed 8 units per acre. When we did the highlights for you on this, we did not highlight that change. And someone did bring that to my attention after it had been adopted. So what I wanted to do is to bring that to your attention, that this, it was throughout, from the very beginning, John Mullen had suggested that, and I think primarily the reason why is if you do the math, the 8 units, if you take the 8,000 away from an acre, 43560, and then you figure what the density is, that brings you to about 4,445. And so I think that's maybe where that 5,000 number came from. So I guess my recommendation would be to use the exact number, which is 4,445. But I just wanted to be clear because we tried to do the best job we could to highlight everything that had been changed and to go over everything, and that was not highlighted, and I wanted to be clear.
Okay, This is 8,000 per one unit,
Um,
and then 5,000 for each additional?
Yes,
I
yes.
think we should add the word additional.
Okay. Great.
5,000 square feet for each additional dwelling unit. Otherwise, it could be interpreted to mean that you would need 13,000 acres for the first unit.
Okay. Okay.
And that's all I have this evening.
Read it that way.
Okay, that's all the recommendations that we have at this time. For the first part, unless anybody has, I'll open it up. Any further questions in entirety? Planning board? City council? Yes. Here or none, I'll declare the planning board meeting, hearing closed.
Okay, the city council, the, the hearing before us is to amend the July 2001 zoning ordinance book by correcting and amending the items outlined on the attached document entitled Attachment to the City Council Petition Form, Amendments to the Leominster Zoning Ordinance. Does any of the city council have any additional information they'd like included to these planning board amendments? Councilor Rosa.
I'd just like to go on record as supporting the amendments to the Leominster zoning ordinance as far as part one. Since I've been on the council, especially this area down on Route 117, we've seen it zoned light industrial. At the time, this did not work. And I can remember early on that we weren't as focused on industrial development in the city of Leominster and commercial development. And during the excesses of the 80s, and we're going through kind of the same process right now with the economy, we faltered. And we corrected that situation. As past chairman of IDC, Industrial Development Commission, we went to a planned development district. Kind of enhanced the zoning in that area, but we really missed the mark. We tried to encourage industrial use of the land, but then we realized that it was too restrictive. So now, through this amendment, or through the zoning change, the planning board and the city council came to an agreement with the mixed-use plan. Now, this is really, I think, on the mark. It's not perfect, but I think with the city council and the planning board being involved in the special permitting process and having a master plan, having bonding and site plan approval, I think this is going to be a winner. I think we're evolving through the process, and we needed to go through the process of having three different uses in that piece of property to protect its integrity, because I did refer to it several times when I was the chairman of the IDC as this land being a diamond in the rough, and now it's being polished. It's going to have a fantastic return in the future economically to the city of Leominster, so it's been well worth the wait and going through the evolving process of making this property attractive to industry and commercial developers. So I just want to go on record as being in favor of these amendments.
Thank you, Councilor Rosa. Are there any other comments? Councilor Lanciani?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can relate to what the councilor from Ward, the at-large councilor across the way is saying, because I was a ward councilor back in the 80s when we were looking to do something with that particular area. And there was many, many times that we come up with different things and schemes of what to do and how to do it. And I think that what is happening here and with the changes, when it was changed to mixed-use development, it has heightened the ability to take and do something with the land and the land area down there. I happen to be down there today with the Chief Peter Roddy to look at some things, and with the two new buildings that are there, you can see development taking place, the area straightening out, Mr. Keating's area being worked on, and if and when the Walmart comes to fruition, I think you're going to see an area that, while we had visions in the 80s of what that would look like, I think it's going to be a pleasant addition to what it will look like once this is all completed. And I wholeheartedly support the changes that the planning board has recommended. I compliment the Judy from Copeland and Page for bringing that to us, and I look forward to voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nichol?
Yes, thank you. I do agree, you know, we had visions for what we had hoped would happen with that land, and visions aren't always 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line. Visions and reality don't necessarily always tend to go together. At this point, I do look forward to voting in favor of these amendments, with the idea that, you know, we have an area down here that, if you read today's paper, and the Worcester Telegram, we think of Worcester as the industrial center for this whole area. 50 years ago, 20, 25 years ago, you know, the Nortons, all these different companies, the big companies that are in Worcester, were a real powerhouse. If you read today's Telegram, they actually talk of Worcester being a bedroom community to the Metro West area. More and more of their tax base is now being generated by housing, less by industrial. We look at this, and I think essentially what's going to happen is we'll be in the same boat in a lot of ways at Worcester. A lot of the use of land like this is most probably not going to be for industrial. It's going to be for commercial. And by doing the mixed use changes here and allowing an easier application of zoning ordinances as far as talking about sites versus lots, things like that, we actually will put ourselves in at least as good a position as Worcester, because I'm sure that they're going to be looking for commercial development, realizing that the industrial development is going to be gone. And 190 is just going to be, between 190 and Route 2, it's going to be a major asset for us. And I can see us taking advantage of this and really having it bloom. And you know, if we have a choice of having people go from this area to Worcester, or go from Worcester up to us, I'd much rather see them coming our way. And with that, I look forward to voting on the amendments.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Councilor Frito?
Being the counselor for that ward and having been the legal affairs chair for, as the Ward 4 councilor mentioned, many, many months and years of reviewing these zoning documents, certainly we can see there's been a number of issues with the Plan Development District. You know, the infrastructure wasn't there. There's been a real cooperative effort, and there's been a real patience on the part of many people in the community in terms of trying to make this whole section work. You know, the diamond in the rough, the jewel of the city, been described in a number of different ways. It's also an ATV haven. I'll be happy not to have any more phone calls regarding the ATVs at 2 o'clock in the morning that awaken everybody up. And I think it's a good compliment. It's not too far from, you know, the condos, the apartments that have just been condominiumized. There's a healthy mixture of proposed uses, and I think it's certainly going to benefit the area. You know, the traffic issue obviously is the key to the whole area once the zoning is changed, and I think there's a real awareness of the traffic. I mean, the roads need to keep up with the development, and I think there's a real attempt to take care of that as we go along. So I am certainly in support of this as well, and hope to see finally something really take place that we can all appreciate there.
Thank you. Councilor Savatelli?
I too, I have a very pleased with the fact that it's gonna be done in a comprehensive manner, you know, taking into account the 117 plan. The only thing that I do wanna caution everybody on is that, and I would like the planning board to be very, very aware of this fact that the only place the city of Leominster has a license to get rid of rubbish is in that area. It involves about 6.5 acres of land. It's gonna be critical for this city to look to the future in terms of where that particular license will that particular license remain there, which I highly doubt, particularly if we're talking about the kinds of major development you're gonna have down there with restaurants and banks and so forth. I can't see trucks coming with waste, pulling into that area, you know, with the kind of commercial and commercial property we have there. So you have a situation down there is, what do we do with that particular area, which used to be our, for all intents and purposes, our dump? What do we do with it? Do we keep it there? The issue of moving a dump in anybody else's neighborhood is as bad as putting a jail or a police station inside here. They don't, I mean, a prison. They don't want it. Now the question is, in terms of planning, what are we going to do with it? And if you're gonna have a comprehensive plan, that particular feature can't be ignored. It's got to be addressed. Where is it going? In fact, you know, we're in a crisis now with rubbish. They're going to cost us a prohibitive. They're going out off the roof, you know, off the charts in terms of, we've got an issue coming up very quickly with the city council in terms of more money being needed. What do we do with that piece of property that's down there? Do we get rid of it? Do we have an alternative place? What if we start recycling ourselves? This is, you know, I hate to put a damper on it, but it's very critical. It's very, very critical what is going to happen to that area 20 years from now, 15 years from now. Has somebody thought about it? I mean, has anybody addressed it? John?
As far as the waste management on the transfer station, we tried to address it when the current transfer station was put in. We put in a number of requirements as far as landscaping, landscape buffers, noise abatement, you know, parking.
The old one I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the new one.
I'm talking about the new one. The old one is, that's, as far as I know, that's gonna be abandoned. I don't know what, that's up to the city council and what they're gonna do with that, but that's a piece of city property, and I don't, tell you the truth, I don't see it being resurrected.
Okay.
And as a transfer station. And I'd say it's a piece of valuable property, could eventually be sold to the city and developed. Okay, but to put a transfer station in the old transfer station site is, you know, I don't see it.
I may expound on that.
I think Council Salvatore has something to say about that.
Development, and the only insurance we have to somehow stop the increase in the monopolization of waste management you want to get rid of.
No. I said it's totally up to the city council. I said that, we have no plans for, and we've made no plans for that piece of property. That is strictly in the...
I would concur with...
The only plans that we made is that the only thing that we did is when the new transfer station went in, that was up to code and we did all the right environmental
And
things.
that's a 20-year lease, by the way.
Right. As
So we're
far
not
as,
going anywhere, Council.
as far as the old transfer station, which the city abandoned, I have no plans. And that's,
Now, of course, there's going to be pressure, I guarantee you. I think Councilor Salvatelli is getting to, I could see that new plant that's going over there. I could see a nice, beautiful Walmart. I could see how people would even consider or think about putting waste there, which I understand we're already with a 20-year lease over here, or 3-year contracts. But I could see the pressure that would be, don't even think about putting something over there when there's a Walmart. But in my opinion, we can never get rid of that land. I mean, I don't know how you're thinking, where you're planning, but that's the only insurance we have that we could be possibly, and I understand the expensiveness, I understand getting rid of it, where do you transfer it? It's still licensed to do a job that is an absolute extremity when it comes to cost and necessity. We cannot get rid of that land, even though I know the pressure's gonna be, you're not gonna put something like that, with all the beautiful aesthetics here. We cannot get rid of that. As the planning board chairman, I'm only just
There
stating.
are no plans, I have no
But you-
thoughts.
No, I didn't think you
entertained
did.
no thoughts.
But I thought it should be just said that, just in case. That's
Yeah,
all,
I
just
mean,
in case.
that's-
It doesn't make sense to do that, even
Nothing to do
though.
with the planning board. That is strictly city council.
No, you're right, but you're also proposing that there's gonna be a comprehensive plan there. And the comprehensive plan has to include that area.
Well, right
Yeah,
now,
but
we're
notice the
looking to make sure we have
transfer
landscaping and it's kept up and looks neat. And that's the only plan that we have. I don't think we have any other plans than that. I think that's the only thing that we have is just to keep it neat and that there be some
The
landscaping.
council, we have a license to continue with this, we have a license to continue
Right.
the transfer station. The question is, once that development comes, we cannot go into that area any longer. Now, where do we go if in fact the waste management contracts go so out of sight, we can't afford it anymore? Where do we go?
I have not addressed
Yeah,
that.
I know somebody has ideas, because I've heard some ideas, where they want to go. But it's gonna be not in my backyard.
Mine either.
Yeah, by the way, it's close to your backyard, they go.
Yeah, I know.
Councilor Rosa?
I have to agree with the chairman of the planning board that this is absolutely city council business.
Yeah.
And we have control over that property, and the mayor will decide with the city council as to whether we're going to keep that license. We can always use that piece of property in an emergency. I agree it has to stay intact. I disagree that we can't use it. We can use it. But I'm sure there's going to be political pressure, but we're elected by the people, and many of us have withstood pressure before, so I think there's two separate issues here. And we have to deal with the old transfer station as a separate issue, and shouldn't really be intertwined with these amendments, because we're gonna have to deal with that. We're gonna have to answer the people. So I think we're in a good position. If nothing else, it's gonna enhance the area, and we still will have control of that property, and it'll be more desirable, and then it's up to us how we protect that license in that area. So I'm just saying, these are two separate issues, and it sounded like we were trying to make it one.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Frida?
I think I agree with all sides. It is part of a comprehensive plan, although it's not part of the planners that are doing the plan. We do have a piece that's within that comprehensive plan that people are talking about. But I kind of disagree with the amount of control we have, and I hate to misdirect the public on what they think we have the ability to do here as a council. Well, I don't think we have any control over that license. And the only control we have is if it's ever brought to us to abandon, declare the property surplus, and that would be what I think our role is in this. Certainly, we've all talked about this. We talked about this when the new transfer station was built. We all had visions. We all had plans put before us. We listened to great presentations that were sold off and went by the wayside, and we were all duped, quite frankly. Yeah, is it important to keep that piece? Absolutely it is. And I don't think it's separate. It's separate from these amendments. I agree with the councilor at large. It's separate from this issue, but it's not separate from the overall comprehensive plan. We're the owners of a piece of that comprehensive plan. And I think there has to be, and I think there will be some interaction as we go along. I think once the amendments are done, I think that's when the planning stage will move forward. And I think we're just going to have to stay on top of it.
Thank you, Councilor. If all the councilors are done, I'd like to open up to the public and ask if anyone in the audience would like to speak in favor of these amendments. Is anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of these amendments? For the third time, is anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of these amendments? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition of the amendments? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition of the amendments?
Third time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition of these amendments? Okay. Any other comments from the council? Planning board? I declare this meeting closed.
Planning board meeting will be continued around the corner for A&R plans and accepting plans.
Okay. Hear that? The planning board meeting will be continued in the planning board office. And is open to everyone.
Very well. Okay.